Hi there folks, well welcome back to my channel. For this video I'm actually going to be talking about the first book that I've actually managed to read cover to cover this year. Okay, I did start it towards the end of last year, but again it's just like I did actually manage to kind of get the majority of it read and finished this year. And it's a book that I actually kind of found really interesting and quite a good read. It is a debut novel by R.M. Brown, and I did actually meet her for the first time back up at the Angus Book Fest, and that'd been the Angus Book Fest back in 2024. And yeah, and again managed to buy my copy of our novel then, and I've finally managed to get around to reading it and finishing it this year. But we'll get into more detail about that in just a moment. If you are enjoying my channel, if you enjoy my videos, if you can click on the subscribe button, click on that notification bell, leave some likes, leave some comments, it's always really appreciated. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can also follow me on TikTok. But to get on to the main topic of the video itself, the book or the novel I'm going to be talking about for this video is called The Song of the Stag, which is a debut novel by R.M. Brown. And yeah, and after that my edition is slightly battered because it has been in and out my bag, but I'd have to admit I do love the artwork for the book itself, and it is very much has that kind of fairy tale mythology kind of aspect to it, which I do kind of quite like. So read the blurb for you if you want to get a wee gist of the story itself. So it goes, Kate is from Storin's borderlands, idyllic, traditional and completely opposed to separatism. But when her life is uprooted and she finds herself in Storin's capital, she quickly realises that her charming countryside life is not the reality for everyone. Drawn to the enigmatic separatist firebrand, the fox of I always struggle with this. The fox of Thorturnok and her tales of a secret heir to Storin's long empty throne, Kate finds herself swept into the battle for Storin's liberation from the Five Realms. Torn between the world that she thought she knew and the world she now must face, Kate will learn what it truly means to be a patriot. So essentially, the Five Realms, in the sense of this book, is the fictionalised version of the UK, and Storin is the fictionalised version of Scotland. So there is. So it's like essentially it's Kate, the main character, is from the borderlands of Storin, and I do very much get the impression that that's supposed to represent like Dumfries and Galloway and the Scottish borders, because again they do tend to kind of lean towards that kind of more traditionalist or kind of unionist politics. They usually tend to kind of vote for like the Tories and such like. And yeah, so but again, with a lot within The Song of the Stag, it was written after the Scottish Independence Referendum back in 2014, which this year will be 12 years ago. It's kind of scary that time's gone by that quickly. It's quite a terrifying thought, actually. And Rebecca, who wrote the novel, has then taken a lot of inspiration from Scottish mythology, Scottish folklore, history, politics, and the kind of Scottish experience, kind of day-to-day life, and has obviously woven that all together within this kind of like fantasy setting. And the book itself, it does actually touch on things like ableism and LGBT community, but it's not. I did not never get the impression that it was like just being shoehorned into the plot. It was very much kind of quite well handled from my experience. And yeah, and I quite liked the way that Rebecca kind of took all these different elements and these different kind of aspects of the novel and just kind of wove them all together. Because there were definitely aspects of like Scottish history and folklore that I was picking up on. And again, Scottish history and folklore are two things that I've been interested in for as long as I can remember. And I did kind of really enjoy those aspects of the story. And yeah, and it was a novel I really enjoyed reading and just kind of getting my teeth into. But so the story starts with Kate and her then fiance, and called Kenzie, and he is joining what is called the Queen's Watch, and he essentially is out to try and deal with the separatists, who are essentially the ones who are trying to have Storin break away from the rest of the Five Realms. And again, as the build for the back of the book very much points out, suggests, yeah, Kate has had very much an idyllic life. She's never really had anything that's challenged her life experience or her world view. But when she has taken to the capital, it's like things just start kind of chipping away at what she has been so certain of in her life up to that point. And I have to admit, as the minute that kind of you really kind of get to know Kenzie, yeah, he really made me feel uncomfortable as a character. I was very much just sitting and reading the book going like, Kate, get away from him, don't like him. Yeah, he gave me the ick. I think he's just, when you kind of get that kind of gut feeling with certain characters, that you just automatically go, no, they're the bad guy. They're the bad guy. And yeah, so I did find him kind of quite a manipulative kind of character. He kind of often kind of infantilises her and kind of gaslights Kate, and it's almost as if he's trying to get her to rely on him, kind of giving him that sense of, that kind of aspect, that wee bit of power, and that giving him that kind of sense of control. And that in itself kind of plays into a lot of the kind of aspects of the novel that are looking at ableism, because Kenzie is very much going to try to set it up that he's trying to protect Kate and try to shield her from like the worst of society, of the world in general, because Kate does have albinism, which obviously kind of makes her stand out. She has kind of quite a striking appearance, like the long white hair, the very kind of pale, almost white skin, and the fact that it's like obviously kind of direct sunlight like does would aggravate and annoy her eyes. So again, he's kind of using his behaviour as a way to say, or try and present himself as being her protector. And yeah, and I kind of like the fact that it's never blatantly stated that that's what he's doing, but that's very much the impression that I got, that he was very much kind of trying to be her, the barrier between her and like the world beyond. And it's the fact that he keeps referring to her as his little dove. So obviously playing on the fact that she does have this very pale appearance, but it also does kind of create that sense of him infantilising her and not allowing her to like spread her wings metaphorically and kind of really develop develop herself as a person. So Kenzie himself is joining the Queen's Guard, and that's the reason why they're heading off to Snowdon's capital, and which is Thornton, and he is very much like focused on like getting the separatists, stopping them. The separatists are the ones who are essentially trying to break Storn away from the rest of the Five Realms. And that's another thing that I got impression with Kenzie, was that he was very much laser focused on the separatists, and very much that's all he wanted to achieve, was to be the one who brought down the separatists. And that Kate essentially was just his like compliant little wife on his arm, because even though at the start of the book they're fiance, they're both each other's fiance, it's very much like she's going to be the docile, compliant little wife who supports him while he's off playing at being heroes. And that was another reason why I very much got that kind of gut feeling of going like, Kate, run, just run, don't look back, yeah, just go. Just that very much that kind of like visceral kind of reaction to how Kenzie was acting towards her, and just, yeah. And but it's when they arrive in Thornton Knock, there is an incident in like the train station that they come into, because they're travelling by train. They actually come across some of the separatists, causing something of an incident within the train station itself. But it's despite Kenzie's best efforts, the separatists managed to escape, and that is Kate's first interaction with the Fox of Thornton Knock, who is one of the separatists' leaders, one of their figureheads. And initially all we know of her is that she's a young woman with this wild shock of red hair. And yes, yeah, I do have a picture of a fox on my wall. Yeah, so it's that thing of when Kate sees this going on and she realises who it is leading the group, she's initially scared. But it's kind of quite interesting in that Kate's fear starts to sort of mingle with intrigue and interest as time goes by. And I have to admit, when they're in the station and it's being described, I automatically was thinking of Glasgow Central. It was just like the glass ceilings, I'm pretty sure it's talking about like there's been like route ironwork and all this kind of stuff, and it was just very much reminding me of all the times I've been travelling in and out of Glasgow Central, which is also one of the two main train stations in Glasgow. And yeah, and it's just wee notes like that where I was going, yeah, can definitely see where you're getting inspiration from. And as I was saying, like Kate's description very much does like set her up as being different and other and not like everyone else. It's like it's not that she's seeing herself as being different. She just wants to get on with her life, do her own thing, live her life, do her thing, and not be kind of the centre of attention. But it's everyone else is like kind of noticing her because of her looks. And I did get the very much impression this was setting her up as being someone who would not essentially be fitting in with what was being expected of her. That she would be maybe kind of going a different path and like blazing a trail in a different direction. So I did actually take quite a lot of notes while I was reading this. It's just try to sift through what I've already talked about and what I still need to talk about. And she ends up that when she first goes to, or when she's first in the city, Kenzie takes her to the accommodation that he's organised for her in a pub called the Crab at Corby. So for those who don't know really anything about Scottish language, Crabbit means grumpy, and Corby is a crow. So it's essentially the Crabby Corby, or the Crabby Corby translates as the grumpy crow. So that's where she ends up staying initially. And she ends up talking to the landlord. And this is where things start getting a bit murky. And where things start like changing for Kate, where she starts seeing that her life maybe shouldn't be on the path that it is. Because she starts talking about the landlord about her stay in the capital and like her experience with the separatists. And she expects the landlord to judge her for like what she's saying and how she like feels about what's going on. And he tells her maybe not to listen too much to Kenzie and to make up her own mind. And yeah, the landlord himself seems to have like more faith in Kate than what Kenzie ever seems to be able to muster. And this is very much when you see her starting to shift, maybe in her views of like on her views of what's really going on, and maybe changing her views on like the Queen's Watch, which Kenzie is now part of. But she's very much kind of walking that fine line, and it kind of starts to scare her. She starts to kind of feel as if, oh, maybe I shouldn't be thinking this, maybe I shouldn't be reacting this way. And it's almost like she justifies her feeling that way by going to Kenzie and voicing her suspicions about the landlord. So she ends up getting moved into Hart Hall, which is where the Queen's Watch are based. But she ends up going back either the next day or the day after to the Crab at Corby to try and like get her head straight or try and figure things out. And that's when she takes the first step in breaking away from like what her life has been up to this point. Because she does come across something happening within the Crab at Corby that very much shifts how she views the five, not initially the five realms straight away, but how she's starting to change her view on Kenzie and the Queen's Watch. And this is when like she ends up running, and pretty much running into the arms of the Fox of Thornton Knock. And what's that happened to? Oh no, initially she's taken back to Hart Hall, and Kenzie really starts kind of gaslighting her, and as if like, oh no, that's not what you saw, that's not what you experienced, that's not what happened. And it's after that, it's like Kenzie goes off to do whatever it is he needs to do. And Kate takes the opportunity to essentially do a runner. And that's when she meets up with the fox. And it's through the fox that she's helped to escape. And initially it's like all she wants to do is go home. She just wants to go back to mum and dad. But the closer she gets to her home, again she changes her mind. And in the long term, that probably was the right decision. Because of course, that's the first place that Kenzie's going to go look for her. And this is when you start finding out a bit more about the separatists and about the fox and who they all are. And Kate, again, through all her adventures that she has, or she initially has with the separatists, she still always has that doubt, always has that question of, is this the right thing I should be doing? And there are moments when she comes across the Queen's Guard again, or her path crosses again with Kenzie. And she has that kind of moment of really doubting her being part of the separatists or being with them in any way, and just wanting to go back to Kenzie. And just wanting to, all she's wanting is to be able to go back to the life that she had before. But again, she has seen too much of who Kenzie is as a person, who he's becoming. And she has seen too much of what's actually happening out in the world beyond what had been her little bubble, where she'd been safe. So initially there is that kind of toing and froing, where she is kind of going, no, I need to be with the separatists, no, I want to go back to Kenzie. And I know some people probably would be like, well, that's really annoying, because surely she's going to see past Kenzie's manipulation. But when you actually have to sit and think about it, all this manipulation has been going on for years. And you're not going to be able to break it straight away. But she does end up standing on her own 2 feet and making the right decision, and like breaking that hold that she's kind of been kept under. And so it's like, so all of this kind of like the political manoeuvrings, all these different things that are going on are very much kind of tied in with aspects of Scottish history and culture. There's like little kind of callbacks to like figures like Robert the Bruce. There's like one character called Elizabeth, who I was very much kind of sitting looking at her going, yeah, are you supposed to be like this novel's version of Elizabeth de Burgh? And yes, Elizabeth de Burgh was Robert the Bruce's second wife, and she was the one who ended up getting taken prisoner by the English during the Scottish War of Independence. So there was kind of calls to that, and there are also kind of calls to the Scots language as well. It's like there's certain bits in the book where they're reciting bits of poetry, and it is very much the way the poetry was flowing. The words that were being used very much had that feel and flow that you'd get with the Scots language. And if you are interested in learning more about Scots as a language, definitely look up Miss Pooney Penny. She is on YouTube and she is on TikTok, so I'll try and put some links in the description bar below if you're maybe want to kind of go in and have a wee look at seeing what she's doing and what she's talks about, because she does a lot of the Scots words of the day, which is a kind of a good way of kind of learning a lot of like what Scots sounds like. So essentially the equivalent of Scots in the Song of the Stag is called laid, which I thought was quite an interesting kind of way of looking at languages in Scotland, because again it's very much presented as being a language that's looked down upon, frowned upon, kind of seen as being less than, which was very much kind of calling back to how both Scots and Gaelic have been viewed and treated in the past. Because I always remember told this when I was doing Scottish literature as part of my undergrad, that like both Scots and Gaelic were always treated as being less than. If anybody went to school and they were heard speaking either Scots or Gaelic, they were literally kind of beaten, kind of given corporal punishment by the teacher. And so essentially, the people tried to beat these languages out of children, hoping that they'd stop being spoken. But now, as I have said in a previous video, both Scots and Gaelic have been recognised as official languages of Scotland. So definitely a step in the right direction. And yeah, so definitely a lot of callbacks to different aspects of Scottish history and culture. And there is something of a crowning ceremony with one of the characters called Aidan, essentially being crowned as the King of Storin. And the way that it's very much set up was very much reminding me of what I'd heard of, like the crowning ceremonies that were held at the Abbey of Scone, which is now the Scone Palace, and which where the Stone of Scone was originally held. Is now held in the Perth Museum, which is probably the closest, most secure location that could be held, with it being as close to its original location. Kind of like, yeah, it's only a few miles from Scone, but it's now held somewhere that's very secure and well looked after. But again, the way that the crowning ceremony happens was very much reminding me of what used to take place at Scone, like before the War of Independence. And obviously, it's in this bit that Aidan gets referred to as the Outlaw King, and he states that he can only rule with the support of the people of Storin, which also is making it, or which also made me think of Robert Bruce, because obviously there's the movie Outlaw King with Chris Pine, and in the Declaration of Arbroath, it's very much set up that the King of Scots can only rule with the support of the lords and the earls, and like the powers that be in Scotland. So again, it's very much set up as this kind of almost like this Robert the Bruce kind of figure, which is part of the reason why I was looking at Elizabeth, who is supposed to be his fiancée, why I was looking at her as being like the Elizabeth de Burgh figure in the novel. So yeah, and there are also a lot of aspects within the separatists where you're very much showing that, yeah, there are those who are there because they're opportunists. Like there's Elizabeth's dad, who's called Lister, and he is very much set up as being, he's there because there's a possibility that he might be able to get some power and influence. And then there's like the ones who have to be won over. Like there's a lot of the people who are being taken to the crowning ceremony here who start heckling and showing their disapproval, and they've got to be won over. And then there's the ones who are like the fair weather followers, who come along when things seem to be going the separatist way, but when the minute things start getting difficult, they disappear like fog. And then there's like the hardcore ones, like the Fox, and those that she's been fighting alongside for years. So that's very much kind of showing the fact that things are usually always kind of complicated, especially within revolutionary forces. that, yeah, things may start out smooth, everything may start out pulling in the same direction, but it does also always get to that point where things start to fragment and go into factions. And there'd be like one group going, no, we need to be doing it this way, others going, no, we need to be doing it this way, and then all the other kind of factions and groups going, no, 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 this is what we need to be doing. And again, that very much is reminiscent of real life, because again, you look at all these kind of revolutionary movements that we've had in history, that they always end up kind of splintering and like going in different directions. You even look what happens in France during the French Revolution, that went into the Reign of Terror, and there was all the kind of different like infighting and different people kind of vying for power and control, and yeah, things got very messy very quickly. So yeah, and I also got the impression there were people within both sides who were very much trying to play both sides and kind of obviously kind of playing it for like for keeps, for like so they can like get their share of the power and kind of make things go their way. So again, this is only the first book in the duology, and I think there were issues with the initial publisher for Song of the Stag, but I think Rebecca has been working on getting things sorted out and getting this I think she's either still working on it or has rectified the situation. So hopefully, fingers crossed, if you look online or if you contact Rebecca, you should be able to get a copy of the Song of the Stag. It's definitely an interesting book. I really enjoyed reading it, and yeah, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the sequel, the second book in the duology, and seeing how the story develops and how it comes to its conclusion. So this is definitely a bit of a longer video for me, but again, just by looking at the size of Song of the Stag, yeah, there's a lot to talk about, different aspects, so yeah, definitely one that I would recommend try to get a copy of. So hopefully you'll enjoy this video, hopefully you'll find it interesting, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.